Did you really believe I did not see it, youngling?
Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Obi-Wan Kenobi, Chapter 5. So, let me get this right out of the way. Last week, we talked about an article that Matt Singer wrote on ScreenCrush.com that talked about how every episode of this series mirrors its corresponding episode of the Skywalker saga. Episode 1, we spend a lot of time on Tatooine and meet a Force-sensitive child. Episode 2, we're on a Blade Runner-type neon planet, and Obi-Wan investigates a plot. Episode 3 has a Vader-Anakin duel where one of them gets very badly burned. Episode 4 shows Ben going into an Imperial stronghold to rescue Leia. And now, this episode has many similarities to The Empire Strikes Back. We have a Master and Padawan training, the siege of a base with cannons, Vader in a tunnel, Vader barely missing an escaping ship, a Sith kneeling, the shot of an underbelly of a Star Destroyer, and the escaping ship even has a busted hyperdrive.
Watch this.
Watch what? Now, it's pretty cool how they incorporated all of this into the show. If it follows the same pattern for the finale, then Reva might take on the Luke Skywalker role and resist the dark side in the final duel. The episode begins with a flashback to Coruscant just before the Clone Wars. We see Anakin and Obi-Wan dueling in the same space where the younglings were training at the beginning of Chapter 1. Now, this is connecting Obi-Wan and Anakin to Reva. In many ways, this place is the site of an original sin, where Obi-Wan failed to train Anakin and where Reva's training was cut short by Anakin. I am wondering if this duel was meant to be Anakin's trial to become a fully fledged Jedi Knight, which he obviously failed, so that's why he's still a Padawan in Attack of the Clones.
Until you overcome it, a Padawan you will still be.
Now, we know this is just prior to Attack of the Clones and not right after because Obi-Wan still has his Jesus hair, but Anakin still has a human hand. And this is the lightsaber that he used before it was crushed in the droid factory.
Obi-Wan's gonna kill me.
The final shot of this opening is overhead, showing the two of them circling one another inside alternating light and dark rings. I think these rings represent the light and dark sides of the Force that are at play within Anakin. And you can see that the center one is dark, hinting at his eventual turn to the dark side. Now, we're going to keep revisiting this lightsaber duel as we move through the episode. I do think it's awesome anytime we can see how the Jedi train. It's always fun to watch them slowly learn and grow and learn new skills.
You're not like that. You can't do anything.
I know, but I want to learn how to do everything. It's a good thing I signed up for Skillshare. They're the sponsor of this video. Skillshare offers thousands of classes that give you endless opportunities to challenge yourself and learn new skills. For instance, I learned how to make stop-motion animated films on my phone, and there are tons of classes about filmmaking and screenplay writing. They offer all sorts of classes for creative people like you for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. Maybe you want to be a comic book artist, or you can play an instrument or learn how to dance at a party. I never took that class. Plus, they're always launching new premium classes, so there really is something for everyone. The site is here for you to learn, so there are no ads. This helps me to stay focused on following my own creative voice. The first 1,000 of our subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. I love using it, and I highly recommend you try it out. Back to the Easter eggs. The channel heavy spoilers pointed out that this scene begins with Anakin looking out the window at the building where Padme lives. Now, this is calling back to the sequence in Revenge of the Sith where he looks out at her home and she looks toward the Jedi Temple in the moments right before he decides to stop the Jedi from arresting Palpatine. So there is a chance that this scene actually takes place after he was reunited with Padme, but before he and Obi-Wan go their separate ways in Attack of the Clones. When Reva comes before Vader, she kneels to him, just like Vader would kneel to his master, but this is also the humbling stance that Jedi take when they are knighted.
Confer on you the level of Jedi Knight. The Council does.
Again, we're showing all these parallels between the Sith and the Jedi. Then we go to the refugees where one of them, this kid, is credited as Corran. If you ever read the Expanded Universe novels from back in the day, then your ears just perked up. When Luke started up his Jedi Academy, his most promising student was named Corran Horn. Corran Horn eventually became a leader on the Jedi Council and a key player in those novels. So, given that this is supposed to be a refugee for Force-sensitive children, this could be our first canon appearance of Corran Horn. Thanks to Megan O'Keefe on Twitter for pointing this out to me. There's another important woman from the EU in this scene. Now, this woman says, Now, the path is referring to the Underground Railroad-style network of safe houses that help the Jedi escape. But for Obi-Wan, it resonates as the path of the Jedi, the oath that he took to protect people. And this woman has a special connection to his past in the Clone Wars series. She's your mom. Now, there are a lot of aliens in the hangar, but the only ones I recognize are these Trandoshans. And later on, we can see the T-47 snowspeeders from the Battle of Hoth. And we also got some new Arabesh letters etched into the wall. Here we have the name Corwin Shelvey. In the old EU, Corwin Shelvey was a Jedi Knight during the Great Jedi Jedi Purge, and eventually he joined the Rebel Alliance and the New Jedi Order. And the name Altice returns. That's a reference to Jyn Altice, who we last saw back in Episode 3. He was a character in the non-canon EU book, Children of the Jedi. Here we can see the phrases, "the light fades but is never forgotten," and "there is no death," both sentiments that keep the Jedi and Rebel fighting spirit alive. Here we have the name Tiberius and multiple "May the Force be with yous," and of course the symbol for the Jedi Order that first appeared in the Clone Wars series. And then his gaze turns to these mini lightsabers. These are probably weapons that the Jedi abandoned when they started their new lives, but some of them might be weapons of the fallen Jedi. Now, I went through the list of Order 66 survivors that we know about and all the Clone Wars Jedi character lightsabers, and for the most part, I can't confirm 100% who any of these sabers belong to. So it's likely they picked up a few sabers from a prop box left over from Revenge of the Sith. Except these two look very much like the lightsaber of Bariss Offee. She was a close friend of Ahsoka Tano who bombed the Jedi Temple after she figured out that the Jedi were actually leading the galaxy to ruin.
That the Jedi are the ones responsible for this war. An army fighting for the dark side. Fallen from the light that we once held so dear.
And there is a theory that she was the one who rescued Grogu from the Jedi Temple, because this crest on the door is the same one that we saw in her quarters in the Clone Wars. So maybe Bariss Offee did save Grogu from the temple, and they were two of the first people to use the path. But the only saber that I recognized for sure was this one, because it's mine. Next we go to Lola in the tunnels working as an Imperial mole. Now notice that when she's under Imperial control, her lights are Sith red, similar to C-3PO when he was reprogrammed to translate the language of the Sith in Rise of Skywalker. You all remember that level of Rise of Skywalker, right? It was the quest that we had to solve in order to unlock the Dagger achievement and go to the Endor moon that set up that Kylo Ren cutscene.
Oh, I get it. They stopped turning Star Wars movies into video games because Star Wars movies are video games.
Preach. Anyways, Leia offers to go into the tunnel and fix the gate because she takes after her old man.
I'm good at fixing things.
But he couldn't fix her. Later on, Leia finds out what's wrong. Restraining bolts basically turn droids into slaves, and the sound when she removes it is identical to the one that we hear in A New Hope when her brother removes R2's.
There you go.
Outside, Ben says,
He hasn't the patience for siege.
fair enough, but Anakin didn't have a whole lot of patience for waiting things out during the Clone Wars. During the Battle of Urbana, Anakin actually took a shortcut to end the Separatist siege.
If you want, I can hide here with you and we can let the people in the city suffer longer.
Then we cut back to the training duel where some of the musical cues are taken from the Battle of the Heroes theme in Episode 3. Now, Brent Mason and Mike Betancourt on Twitter both pointed out familiar styles in this duel. Kenobi's fighting stance in the flashback mirrors his poses against Dooku pre-duel, and then mirrors his fight with Anakin during Revenge of the Sith. Great observation.
A Jedi's goal is to defend life, not take it.
Now, it's great to see a scene like this. If you never knew Anakin was going to turn to the dark side, then you would just think that he was a headstrong student. But in context, you can see that the seeds for his turn were already planted years before it happened. Even before the Clone Wars, he was more prone to aggressive styles than the way of the Jedi. During the Clone Wars, we often saw him use violence to solve problems. He straight up stabs an assassin from behind, and he also kills Admiral Trench in cold blood. Now, if it seems like this version of Anakin seems more connected to the Clone Wars series, then that's probably because Hayden Christensen actually went back to watch that series to fully understand the Anakin Skywalker that has grown since his first performance. Very cool. And I think that this line is telling.
Mercy doesn't defeat an enemy, Master.
This shows the linear thinking that Anakin has. That's the thinking of a Sith. Maybe Mercy doesn't defeat an enemy, but it can turn an enemy into a friend. For instance, Luke shows mercy to Vader, and in turn, Vader joins him and kills the Emperor.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Temporarily, I guess. Vader also doesn't follow his own advice. He leaves Reva alive, leaving her to maybe face him in the next episode. And I think we're going to see something in the finale that draws from this as well. Somehow Obi-Wan will show an act of mercy that will defeat Vader. Some lesson that the Master can teach his former Padawan, which will explain this line.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the Master.
Adam Williams on Twitter even points out that this line,
Your need to prove yourself is your undoing. Until you overcome it, a Padawan you will still be.
we'll be foreshadowing the mistake that Vader makes in the season finale that'll set up that other line for when they meet again. In the duel, Obi-Wan also takes on the more defensive form of Qui-Gon, not the aggressive stance he uses in the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, a neat way of showing the evolution of his styles between the movies. Now this interlude ends with a cutaway after his saber strike, very similar to the wipe after he starts killing Tuskens in Attack of the Clones, which, by the way, is the moment he turned to the dark side, because Tuskens are people too.
And not just the men, but the women and the children too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals.
Hashtag Tuskens are people too. In this scene, composer Natalie Holt buries just a little bit of the Imperial March in the score. That is one of several buried musical themes in this show. Inside, we see the lifter droid Ned 1, as indicated by the Arabesh letters on his back. He's doing what he was built for, lifting, kind of like my other favorite robot, Bender. The double-barrel cannon the Imperials use looks a lot like the turbo lasers they mount on their ships to shoot down fighters. I wonder if this could be a modified version of that to use as a kind of battering ram. I loved how Reva's Sith shuttlecraft lands and blocks out the screen, kind of like the Sith blocking out the light of the Jedi Order. A lot of people on Twitter were asking me why she didn't just cut through the door right away. And my best answer is because the Sith feed on fear. The more afraid the people inside become, the more vulnerable they are to attack, and the stronger the Sith become. When she does open the door, we see Roken using Chewbacca's weapon of choice, the bowcaster. Ben gets a message from Bail Organa that will later set up the final episode. But Bail serves another key purpose.
If he's learned of the children.
He reminds us that the real danger here isn't Ben dying or even Leia dying. It's Vader discovering that he has children. At least one of those children must be kept safe because they're the galaxy's only hope.
The Emperor knew, as I did, if Anakin were to have any offspring, they would be a threat to him.
And how sweet was it that Bail offered to help out Owen?
I'll head to Tatooine. Owen will need help with the boy.
I mean, if you wanted to help him out, you could have shipped him a couple jugs of water and made him the richest farmer on Tatooine, but whatever. And while Ben is watching the message, he does the same mustache twirl as Alec Guinness watching Leia's hologram in A New Hope. Now, this whole show has been about Ben slowly trying to get his groove back. He's using the Force again, trying out the Jedi mind trick. And here...
Is everything all right?
It will be.
It's like he's relearning how to trust in the Force, after the Force let him down in a pretty big way.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
Tala tells the story about wiping out Force-sensitive families on a planet called Garel, and we've seen Garel before in the Star Wars Rebels episode Droids in Distress.
Wait, don't shoot, don't shoot! You're here to rescue me!
Now, I like that we get a bit of her backstory, giving us her motivations for trying to save as many people as possible. The Inquisitor storyline is drawing from the darker parts of human history like slavery in the United States and the Holocaust in Europe. This story frames her as a kind of Oscar Schindler figure, a member of the establishment who's doing all she can to be a light in this darkness. Now, Reva stops the siege when Ben offers to negotiate, which on the surface makes no sense. I mean, there is no reason for her to stop. She's winning. But Ben is manipulating her emotions. The Sith's greatest strength is their passion, but it's also their greatest, most exploitable weakness. Then she reveals the backstory that we all guessed, but it still hits hard. She was one of the younglings in the opening of Episode 1, where, by the way, she was wearing the same training helmets that we saw the kids wear in Attack of the Clones. And the channel heavy spoilers pointed out that this little guy looks a lot like the same one that was trapped in stasis in Episode 4. She describes the heartbreaking moment that she saw Anakin.
We thought he was there to help us.
Which is like those kids in Revenge of the Sith that were hiding in the Jedi Council chamber because they thought they would be safe there.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
I don't know, man. All this is starting to hit way too close to home. So Reva's origin is framed as her simply wanting revenge on Anakin Skywalker. But what she doesn't realize is that in doing so, she is actually making the same mistakes and falling to the dark side just like Anakin. She says,
I tried to help them, but I couldn't. I was too weak.
And this is the main reason why Anakin began his turn. He was unable to save his mother, so he wanted more power so he would never feel weak again.
I will even learn to stop people from dying.
And Anakin thinks he could have achieved that goal if it weren't for Obi-Wan.
It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous. He's holding me back.
So Reva wants to kill Vader, but all Sith want to kill their masters. That's the point of the rule of two. Every apprentice will always want more power and try to overthrow and replace their master. The hell of it is, at another point in time, Vader might have used Reva's hate and made her his apprentice, but more on that in a bit. Reva also has a grudge against Obi-Wan.
Where were you?
Well, Reva, he was ending the war, so maybe cut him some slack.
So uncivilized.
But Obi-Wan did also create a signal that warned other Jedi to stay away from the temple.
This message is a warning and a reminder for any surviving Jedi.
So that signal would have prevented any hope for Reva's rescue. Then she gives the order, like her master Darth Sidious once did.
Wipe them out.
Then the final assault begins, with Tala pulling out a thermal detonator like we first saw in Return of the Jedi.
Because he's holding a thermal detonator.
Or why not just get a bunch of them and throw them all down the tunnel at the same time?
Because they only had one.
Only one?
Only one.
Okay then.
Back to the flashback where Obi-Wan is surprised by his apprentice's strength. Maybe because, by Anakin using his aggression, he began to draw some of that strength from the dark side. He says this line, "Admit you are beaten." Another parallel to The Empire Strikes Back.
You are beaten.
And this whole sequence where Anakin keeps striking Obi-Wan is just like how his son would clash sabers with him when he was down in Jedi. So then Ben, true to his twin brother Jesus, decides to stop fighting and turn himself in. His goal, like Luke, is to turn a Sith into an ally against an even scarier Sith. This is also a lesson that Ben would employ in A New Hope.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Ben surrenders his weapon just as Anakin takes away his weapon in the flashback. See, this is how you do flashbacks. Events in the past inform events in the present. You can't just randomly cut away to stuff while the main character takes a nap. Now, here we see Purge Troopers. They were introduced in the game Jedi Fallen Order to serve as elite Jedi hunting troops that work directly under the Sith Inquisitors. And, as Langchris on Twitter points out, it takes Obi-Wan 2 blows to kill one of them. So I guess that's a step up from battle droids. Speaking of Fallen Order, Kenzie L on Twitter points out that Reva's arc is almost exactly the same as the Second Sisters from that game. Since that game takes place before this show, maybe this explains how Vader saw Reva's betrayal coming. Then Vader stops the ship from taking off by using the Force, which Elite Nosferatu on Twitter pointed out we see in the game Force Unleashed. But it reminded me of this scene from Rise of Skywalker.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Sorry, I mean this one. And this was also part of the Star Tours ride.
Don't underestimate my power.
And again, the flashbacks mirror what is happening in the present. Obi-Wan defeated Anakin without weapons by outsmarting him, and here he escapes by using his own rage against him. Last week we put out a video about how the Disney version of Vader is absolutely perfect, and here's a small technical detail that was always done wrong in the original trilogy: the reflections on Vader's helmet. Now, because they filmed this in the volume, Vader's helmet actually reflects his environment, because that environment is actually being projected around him. But they also added the reflection of Reva's saber right here. In Empire and Return of the Jedi, Vader's helmet never reflected the lightsabers because the glow was rotoscoped in post. George Lucas didn't even fix this in the special editions, but here it's the kind of extra detail that really immerses you in the world. But Vader did learn a lesson from Obi-Wan's training. He turns the technique around on Reva, easily disarming her. In fact, Mickey Bell on Twitter pointed out that just for a moment, it looks like Vader is assuming the same fighting stance as Anakin's apprentice, Ahsoka Tano. Afterwards, he has her at his mercy with two sabers, just like he pinned Dooku in Revenge of the Sith. And before it was broken, Reva's saber is the same spinning saber that we saw the Inquisitors use in Star Wars Rebels. Then Vader drops this line.
Did you really believe I did not see it, youngling?
Damn! He knew! He knew all along.
What?
Now, I mentioned this earlier, but a few years later, Vader probably wouldn't have minded Reva's betrayal. He probably would have used her hatred to recruit her as an apprentice. Shortly after the Battle of Yavin, when he finds out that a pilot named Skywalker blew up the Death Star, he realizes that Palpatine lied to him in Revenge of the Sith.
It seems in your anger, you killed her.
That's when he began to plot overthrowing the Emperor, which led to this.
Join me.
Then Reva crawls over to find the message from Bail Organa and realizes that the guy she met in episode 1 is actually hiding a Jedi child from Vader. And since she's obsessed with Anakin Skywalker, maybe she knew the open secret that Padme was pregnant with his child, meaning that she is heading back to Tatooine to use young Luke Skywalker as bait. And look, hey, this episode was co-written by Andrew Stanton, the writer-director of such Pixar films as Finding Nemo and WALL-E. And finally, the Grand Inquisitor returns, so he can appear later in Rebels, and all of you can stop your grumbling about how the show's created so many plot holes. Well, that's all the Easter eggs I found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below, or you can @ me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.